You guys, this is how you make clay. Okay.
So a couple years ago, this really got me thinking, if we were stranded out in the middle of nowhere, what exactly would it take to make some good clay? That's exactly what we're exploring in this video today. Now, to gather up the materials for this experiment today, I just went down to the local river and walked down beside the riverbed. I found a nice little place under the bridge where there's a lot of...
Okay, you don't need to go there. You can go anywhere. Like at your backyard or whatever.
traffic, took a second to enjoy the scenery, and then started digging down into the dirt as close to the water as I felt comfortable. Now, the reason I went for dirt by the riverbed is because clay is sedimentary, which means it flows down to the lowest point. And while I actually have extracted clay from dirt from my backyard, I find it's much better down by the river. So take a trip down to your local river, grab some dirt, and you want to be looking for the dirt that when you squish it, kind of has that plasticky feel. It sticks together into one big clump. If you find something like that, you're well on your way to making clay. So here we are, guys. We've got a nice little amount of dirt here, and the first thing to notice about it is it's not very clean. There's all kinds of rocks, there's sand, there's little sticks and twigs. This stuff is very, very dirty, and even though you can squish it and turn it into different shapes, it's not super clean. You can see all the organics and those large chunks of rock sticking through. So to actually extract the clay out of this dirty mixture, we're going to need to put it through a very, very simple process, and the only things we're going to need to make that happen are a couple of different containers and a little bit of water. So quick update, guys. You can see that I just added a little bit of water to this mixture, and I used my glove just to reach down there and stir it around. What we're actually doing is we're breaking up all the different pieces in the dirt itself. We've got rocks, we've got sand, we've got clay, we've got organic materials, and what happens is as we mix it with water, they separate to their different layers. Now over time, the clay and sand all settles to the bottom, so what we want to do is stir this vigorously. We'll get everything suspended, and then give it about 5 seconds to settle, and then transfer all the liquid into a separate container. Watch what happens when we do. Sweet. Now if we stop pouring right here, you can see most of the heavy stuff is left behind. If we look down the bucket, you can see gravel, rocks, everything that's heavy. You can even see a bit of sand left here on the bottom of the bucket. We can essentially take this stuff and we can throw it away because we're not going to need these big rocks. What we're after now is all the stuff that's contained in this liquid here. Now the second pass is going to be a little bit different. We're going to need something like a strainer. You could use your shirt, you can use your socks, or in this case I'm just going to use a strainer for convenience. We're going to go ahead and clean out this container, then we're going to pour all this liquid through the strainer back into it, and hopefully that'll remove most of the organic material. It almost looks like concrete gravel. Very cool. So I've washed and cleaned out this white bucket. We got our little strainer here. As I said, you can use your shirt or any kind of cloth material. We're just trying to strain out those organics. But remember that before we pour this solution through the strainer, it's very important to stir it up and agitate it so all those clay particles resuspend in the water once again. So you can see once we strained everything out, we've got quite a bit of organic material left behind. We've got sticks, leaves, twigs, anything that was floating to the surface. And if you want to be extra cautious, you can go ahead and clean out your strainer and filter it one more time to catch anything you might have missed. Starting to look a little like chocolate milk. What's interesting about this is every time we pour it back and forth, you notice there's some kind of a sandy residue left behind. And that's because the sand is actually heavier than the clay and sinks down to the bottom as we're pouring it. So theoretically now, if we take 2 containers and we simply transfer it back and forth and clean the sand out every time, eventually most of that sand is going to be reduced and we're going to have a very fine clay. So here we are, guys. What we've got now is a bucket full of clay water, essentially, that has a little bit of sand. We have used gravity and density of the materials inside to filter out the rocks. We've used a strainer to filter off most of the organic materials, and so now we just have a solution of clay suspended in water. And the longer we let this sit, the more of that sand and clay will drop down to the bottom. Now we don't want the clay to actually settle down yet. We want to extract that first. So all I'm going to do now is use these two containers to cycle them back and forth and extract the layers of sand each time we do. And while they're doing that, it's a good time to drop down to the description and click the link to check out Casper mattresses. My wife and I have been using our Casper mattress for over 2.5 years now, and to date it is but they're not super comfortable to sleep on. And if you do some quick so treat making beautiful code the king of a Casper mattress is completely to see if it's worth your money. Chances are you're going to love it, and if you it'll make you wonder how mattress that we're using. It is a really comfortable with my cable, which I commit to it. And by using the spent thousands of hours, 25,000. Casper is designed in just their luxury mattress. Really love it. Mattress. And with that, our clay. So there we have it, guys. I poured this back and forth about 4 times, taking out a little bit of fine sand each time we do. Now, we could continue this process almost indefinitely, and we're just, at this point, getting out some of that really fine silt. But right here, we have relatively clear, relatively fine clay water, and the only thing we really need to do with this now is set it down on a counter where it won't be disturbed for about an hour to give the layers a chance to separate. Just for fun, we had some leftover water, so I transferred that into another container. I'm just going to set these down right here so we can watch them over a period of time and see how they set up. 5 hours now, and you can see the clay is so fine that it's actually taking quite a bit of time for the water to rise up even to this level. Now, if we let this sit for maybe a day or so, I'm sure that clay would compact even more and we have more water on top. However, there's a quicker way to extract the water than that. Now, the first thing we need to do is get this water that we have on top off of the top, and there's a few ways we can do that. We can simply tip it over and pour it out, or we can use something like a siphon to try and suck it out. Now, either option is going to have its pros and its cons, but ultimately, all we want to do is make sure we get this clay here without any of this stuff here. So first things first, I'm just going to take this tall glass here. We're going to just tip this over very slowly, very carefully to get as much of that water off the top as we can. I'm just going to pour off the top layer of that clay as well, just to extract most of that water. We'll call that right there pretty good. Most of that's going to be really fine clay. You can see it's very, very moist, so we need to clean that up with a towel. Now, the second method of extracting this water is siphoning it. We can use this to suck the fluid up over here, but before it hits our mouth, we can dump it over here, and gravity will suck everything out, very similar to a vacuum cleaner. Now, to get even more of the moisture out of our clay, we want to use something like a towel or a shirt, something that's very tight-knit and has a lot of fibers. In this case, I'm going to take this towel and I'm going to double it over on itself. We almost want to make a piece of fabric that the clay will not go through. We want all of it to stay inside if possible. So we've got a little makeshift filter here. We're going to pour these in. Hopefully it's tight enough that it'll hold the clay inside. But we can tie it up into a little ball. We can hang it up and let the atmosphere suck the moisture out of it for a few hours until we're just left with the clay itself. And you can see this towel wants to suck down, but we don't want it to. And hopefully this is thick enough that it's not actually going to go through the towel itself. We want to be able to pick this up and see very little, if anything, coming through the bottom of the bucket. We want it to all stay inside. So that's looking pretty good so far. Coming through the bottom of the bucket. We want it to all stay inside. So that's looking pretty good so far. Might even want to clamp that down. Obviously in the wild, in nature, you wouldn't have clamps, but you can improvise with something else. We just don't want the towel to actually suck down into the bucket. Here we go with round 2. Starting to get heavy now. Beautiful. There we go. There's all our clay in our towel, and we're just going to fold this up, tie it off, and hang it for a bit. Now, if everything goes well, we want to take all the edges of this towel, fold them all together, and make a nice little ball of liquid. Oop, that just fell in. It's okay, we can save it. There we go. It's looking very good. Very good. Alright, so we got our slip knot set. Now all we have to do is shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Doesn't have to be clean, just has to be functional. Here, what do you think? All right. So this is pretty much what we're going for, guys. We got our clay wrapped up inside the towel, and you can see some moisture dripping off, but a lot of that is relatively clean water. It doesn't have the clay in it because the clay is being trapped by the fibers on the inside of the cloth. Now, if we just let this hang out for a couple of hours, most of that moisture is going to come out, and we should be left with a nice ball of clay. Alright guys, we are back. It's been about an hour now since we took our bag outside and let it hang off of the railing. Now, in the interest of time, I actually did squeeze the bag a little bit to help encourage a little bit of that moisture to come out a little bit quicker. In doing so, I sacrificed a little bit of the clay itself, but I don't think that's going to jeopardize the proof of concept. So here we are with our towel, with most of the water squeezed out of it. If we open this up now and take a look inside, you can see a lot of the clay on the upper edges has started to harden up and is very plastic. The stuff on the inside, though, is still really liquidy. It's kind of like runny diarrhea. And if we left this out exposed to the air, eventually that moisture would evaporate and the clay would become hard. However, there is a way we can speed things up. There's a way we can cheat, and all we need is a little bit of paper towel. All we're going to do is rip off a few sheets of paper towel, fold it in half, and we're going to stick it down on the table like this. Then we're going to scoop up our clay, put it down in the center of our paper towel, and we're basically just going to flatten it out. The paper towel is going to absorb a lot of the moisture out of the clay, and as soon as it reaches the consistency we're looking for, we can peel off the paper towel and wrap our clay in saran wrap or a plastic bag for later use. Now again, if you don't have a paper towel, all you have to do is just let this sit out in the open air a little bit longer and let it evaporate on its own, but we're just using this technique to speed the process up a bit. Now I'm just going to take a couple more sheets of paper towel, lay them over top, and help flatten it out from the top side to help absorb the moisture a little bit quicker from up here as well. And now, as easy as that, oh wow, I love this part. Peel this back and take a look at this. We have some very nice, beautiful, ready-to-use clay that just peels off and molds in the palm of your hand. That is amazing. This stuff is very moldable. It's very easy to work with.
And that's how you make clay. This is CG. CNG TV. Please like and subscribe. And please say my name in one of your videos. This is not about making clay. Just please, okay? Okay, bye.